An island smaller than Tasmania, home to just 23 million people, recognized diplomatically by only 13 countries as of 2026, yet responsible for producing the overwhelming majority of the world's most advanced computer chips. Every smartphone, every AI model, every fighter jet, every modern data center depends in one way or another on technology made here. Two nuclear powers disagree over its future. The world's largest navy trains around it. One great power claims it as its own sovereign territory, and the entire global economy depends on its continued operation in ways that most people who use that technology every day have never considered. No other place on Earth combines economics, technology, military strategy, international law, and great power competition quite like Taiwan. This documentary explains why. Begin with geography. Because in Taiwan's case, geography is not merely background context. It is the foundation of every strategic calculation made about this island since 1949, and of every calculation being made today. Taiwan is located in the Western Pacific, approximately 180 kilometers off the southeast coast of mainland China. It sits at the center of what military strategists call the first island chain, the arc of islands running from the Japanese archipelago in the north through Taiwan to the Philippine archipelago in the south. This chain represents the inner boundary of the open Pacific as seen from the Chinese mainland. Any naval power that controls the first island chain controls the geographic gateway between the confined near seas of East Asia and the open Pacific Ocean. Taiwan's position at the center of that chain means it is not primarily a territorial dispute between China and a small island. It is a contest over who controls the most strategically significant geographic position in the world's most economically consequential ocean. To Taiwan's north sites Japan, the United States' most important ally in the Pacific, hosting approximately 54,000 U.S. troops and the closest major U.S. military partner to the Taiwan Strait. To Taiwan's south sites the Philippines, which has granted the United States access to 9 military bases since 2023, including facilities in northern Luzon, the island closest to Taiwan. To Taiwan's east, beyond 180 kilometers of open ocean, sits Guam, the critical American logistics hub approximately 2,700 kilometers from Taiwan, hosting Andersen Air Force Base and Naval Base Guam. And to Taiwan's west, across the 180-kilometer strait, sits the mainland coast of the People's Republic of China, where, as of 2025, 134 Chinese military air bases within 1,000 miles of Taiwan have been confirmed, along with approximately 650 hardened aircraft shelters at those bases. The geography of Taiwan is not separable from the military situation of Taiwan. They are the same subject. Now here is the history, which cannot be told without acknowledging that it is genuinely contested between two governments that each claim to be its legitimate custodian. Taiwan's recorded history as a distinct political entity begins with Dutch colonial administration in the 17th century, followed by incorporation into the Qing dynasty, and then, after the First Sino-Japanese War in 1895, Japanese colonial rule for 50 years. Japan surrendered in 1945. Taiwan was placed under the administration of the Republic of China, the ROC, then governed by Chiang Kai-shek's nationalist government. 4 years later, in 1949, the Chinese Civil War ended with the Communist Party's victory on the mainland. Chiang Kai-shek and approximately 2 million nationalist soldiers, officials, and civilians evacuated to Taiwan. The People's Republic of China was proclaimed on the mainland on October 1, 1949. The Republic of China government on Taiwan continued to claim to be the legitimate government of all of China. The People's Republic of China claimed Taiwan as a renegade province to be reunified. That fundamental dispute, which government is the legitimate authority over the Chinese state, has never been formally resolved. And it is the origin of every dimension of the current situation. Here is the international legal position, which is more complex than most media coverage acknowledges. The People's Republic of China maintains that there is one China, that Taiwan is an inalienable part of Chinese territory, and that the PRC is the sole legitimate government of China. The Republic of China, the government of Taiwan, has evolved its position significantly since 1949. It no longer formally claims to be the government of all of China in the same way it once did. Taiwan's elected government today emphasizes the democratic self-governance of Taiwan's 23 million people and their right to determine their own future. The United States' position, the most consequential external position, is strategic ambiguity. The United States acknowledges the Chinese position that there is one China and that Taiwan is part of China. It does not endorse that position. It does not recognize the PRC's claim to sovereignty over Taiwan. And it maintains unofficial relations with Taiwan through the American Institute in Taiwan and sells Taiwan defensive arms under the Taiwan Relations Act of 1979. UN Resolution 2758 of 1971, which recognized the PRC as the only lawful representative of China to the United Nations, is often cited as legally confirming Chinese sovereignty over Taiwan. This is a disputed interpretation. The resolution addressed representation in the UN, not sovereignty over Taiwan. Most international lawyers assess that the resolution did not resolve the question of Taiwan's legal status. The honest summary of Taiwan's international status in 2026 is this: Taiwan governs itself. It holds democratic elections. It has its own military, currency, passport, and foreign policy. It is not recognized as an independent state by most countries. 13 maintain formal diplomatic relations as of 2026. And the legal question of its ultimate status under international law remains genuinely unresolved. That unresolved status is not an accident. It is a deliberate condition, maintained by all parties, because resolving it in either direction would trigger a crisis that none of the relevant powers is currently willing to risk. Now here is the semiconductor story, because the semiconductor story is not incidental to Taiwan's strategic importance. It is the reason every major government in the world has reassessed Taiwan's significance in the last 10 years. The Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, TSMC, was founded in 1987 by Morris Chang, with initial investments from the government of Taiwan and a small number of technology companies. It pioneered a business model that did not previously exist at scale, the pure-play foundry, a company that designed no chips of its own, but manufactured chips designed by others at the highest possible levels of precision and quality. Slow. That model created a concentration of capability that is without precedent in any strategic industrial context. TSMC's 2025 results, reported in January 2026, confirmed what the technology industry has known for years. Annual revenue, $122.42 billion US dollars, up 35.9% year-on-year. North America accounted for 75% of net revenue. High-performance computing, primarily AI and data center chips, generated 58% of revenue. Advanced nodes of 7 nanometers and below accounted for 74% of wafer sales. And in the fourth quarter of 2025, TSMC entered volume production on its 2-nanometer process node, the most advanced semiconductor manufacturing process in commercial production anywhere in the world. The strategic significance of those numbers requires explanation. 2-nanometer chips are not simply faster than older chips. They are qualitatively different in what they enable. The AI models that power the most advanced language systems, autonomous vehicles, weapons guidance systems, satellite imagery analysis, cybersecurity monitoring, and the entire digital infrastructure of modern economies, all require chips manufactured at 2 nanometers, 3 nanometers, or 5 nanometers process nodes. TSMC produces approximately 90% of chips at those advanced nodes that the world currently uses. Its Arizona facility, which has received total commitments of $165 billion, is expanding. But TSMC itself has confirmed what analysts consistently note: the most advanced production capacity remains in Taiwan. The company's 2026 capital expenditure plan, between $52 and $56 billion, a new historical record, confirms that the primary investment in advanced production is continuing in Taiwan, not in the United States. This creates what analysts call the Silicon Shield, the argument that Taiwan's irreplaceable role in the global semiconductor supply chain constitutes a form of deterrence. The more indispensable Taiwan becomes to the AI supply chains that every major power is building, the higher the cost of any military disruption. A January 2026 U.S.-Taiwan trade deal committed $250 billion in Taiwanese investments into the United States semiconductor sector. A deliberate deepening of the economic relationship that strengthens the Silicon Shield from both directions. But the Silicon Shield argument has limits that this documentary must present honestly. TSMC has fabs in Japan, Germany, and the United States as well as Taiwan. The company's geographic footprint is expanding, and the Stimson Center's August 2025 analysis concluded that China is unlikely to invade Taiwan, in part because the economic costs of destroying the chip production capacity it seeks to acquire would fall on China as much as on any other power. Whether the Silicon Shield makes Taiwan more or less secure is a question that the most serious strategic analysts have not definitively resolved. Now, here is why China seeks reunification with Taiwan, presented as accurately as the available evidence allows, from China's own perspective. The People's Republic of China's position on Taiwan has multiple dimensions that this documentary presents without endorsing or challenging. The historical dimension. China considers Taiwan a historically Chinese territory, separated by Japanese colonialism and the outcome of the Civil War, whose final resolution was never completed. The national identity dimension. Xi Jinping has described the reunification of Taiwan as essential to the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation, a central element of the CCP's domestic legitimacy narrative. The military strategic dimension, a Taiwan under the PRC's control, would break the first island chain, providing Chinese naval forces with unrestricted access to the Western Pacific and fundamentally altering the military geometry of the entire region. The economic dimension, TSMC's semiconductor production capacity, if controlled by Beijing, would give China leverage over the global economy that no previous state has possessed. And the domestic political dimension, every Chinese leader since 1949 has maintained that reunification is a core commitment of the Communist Party's governing mandate. For Xi Jinping, who has consolidated power more completely than any Chinese leader since Mao, Taiwan is not a foreign policy question. It is a question of historical mission and personal legacy. Here is what the American position actually is. The Taiwan Relations Act of 1979 is the legal foundation of the U.S.-Taiwan relationship. It commits the United States to make available to Taiwan defensive arms in such quantity as may be necessary to enable Taiwan to maintain a sufficient self-defense capability. It states that any non-peaceful determination of Taiwan's future would be considered a matter of grave concern to the United States. It does not commit the United States to military intervention. That omission is deliberate. It is the strategic ambiguity that has characterized U.S. policy for 47 years. The U.S. has sold Taiwan more than $39 billion in foreign military sales since 2015. In December 2025, it announced the largest single package in history, $11.15 billion in arms, including 82 HIMARS systems and 420 Army tactical missile systems. And in May 2026, at a summit with Xi Jinping in Beijing, President Trump discussed a $14 billion arms package to Taiwan, a package whose status as of June 2026 remained unclear. That sequence of events, the massive arms package announced in December 2025, Trump-Xi summit in Beijing in May 2026, arms package status unclear in June 2026, is not a minor diplomatic episode. It is a live illustration of the central tension in U.S.-Taiwan policy. The tension between deterrence, which requires credible commitment to Taiwan's defense, and diplomacy, which requires maintaining a working relationship with Beijing. Both pressures are real. Both pull in different directions, and how that tension is managed will significantly shape Taiwan's security environment in the years ahead. Here is the military balance. Assessed honestly, using confirmed data, while distinguishing what is known from what is estimated and what remains genuinely uncertain. The People's Liberation Army has undergone the most rapid military modernization of any country in modern history. The U.S. Department of Defense's 2025 China Military Power Report, the most authoritative American assessment of Chinese military capability, assessed that China seeks to produce 6 additional aircraft carriers by 2035 for a total of 9. China currently has 134 military air bases within 1,000 miles of Taiwan, confirmed by satellite imagery analysis published by the Hudson Institute in January 2025. Those bases have approximately 650 hardened aircraft shelters. In April 2025, the PLA conducted Straight Thunder 2025A, an Eastern Theater Command exercise that simulated strikes on command centers, arsenals, air defense command posts, and Taiwanese energy infrastructure, including LNG terminals. In December 2025, the PLA conducted Justice Mission 2025, blockade exercises around Taiwan that the ISWAEI assessment confirmed were the second blockade exercise of the year. ISW confirmed 46 incursions into Kinmen's waters and 32 incursions into Proteus's waters in 2025, based on ship tracking data and Taiwan Coast Guard reports. These exercises are not simply diplomatic signals. They are operational training. The PLA is practicing the specific military operations, blockade, encirclement, strikes on infrastructure, that would be required to coerce or defeat Taiwan. Against this, Taiwan's own military position. Taiwan's defense budget has increased annually for 7 consecutive years, reaching approximately 2.5% of GDP. In May 2026, Taiwan's legislature passed a $24.8 billion 8-year special budget for arms procurement. Taiwan launched its Whole-of-Society Defense Resilience Committee in June 2024, an effort to prepare civil society, government, and the private sector for crisis scenarios. The honest strategic assessment, drawing on CSIS, RAND, Brookings, and peer-reviewed academic analysis, is this. The balance of forces has shifted significantly toward China in the last decade. The 2025 U.S. National Security Strategy acknowledged that in some scenarios, China could achieve a balance of forces so unfavorable to the United States as to make defending Taiwan impossible. CSIS's Wargaming in the First Battle of the Next War series found that in most scenarios, the United States and Taiwan can prevent a Chinese invasion from succeeding, but at very high cost to all parties. The Brookings RAND March 2026 analysis noted that the United States military cannot maintain the capabilities to deter China along the first island chain without the help of allies. And peer-reviewed analysis published in 2025 in the Journal of International Relations, examining the structural mechanisms for deterrence failure, concluded that cross-strait deterrence remains structurally stable despite the pronounced rise in China's military power. The most defensible assessment of the military situation is that deterrence is holding, but that the margin of that deterrence has narrowed, the cost of conflict has risen substantially, and the assumptions underlying American capability in the region are being actively tested. Here is what Taiwan's disruption would mean for the global economy, assessed through verified evidence rather than speculation. The Taiwan Strait carries more than 1/5 of all maritime commerce, confirmed by CSIS December 2024 analysis. TSMC produces approximately 90% of the world's most advanced chips. TSMC's 2025 revenue was $122 billion, representing value that flows through the global technology supply chain at multiples of that figure. A disruption of Taiwan's semiconductor production, whether through conflict, blockade, or coercion, would affect the production of smartphones, automobiles, data centers, AI systems, military hardware, and the digital infrastructure of every modern economy. The Iran War of 2025 to 2026 exposed what CSIS identified in June 2026 as critical challenges in Taiwan's energy system. Taiwan relies on imports for 97% of its energy supply. Any blockade of Taiwan would therefore create energy as well as semiconductor supply chain disruptions simultaneously. The global economic consequences of a Taiwan disruption would not be comparable to any prior economic shock. They would exceed the supply chain disruptions of COVID-19 in scale and depth, because the disrupted commodity would be the one that every other industry depends on to function. Now here is the Anglosphere dimension, which connects this documentary directly to this channel's broader series. For the United States, Taiwan represents the most consequential test of American strategic commitment in the Indo-Pacific. If deterrence fails and Taiwan falls under Chinese control, the first island chain is broken, the U.S. alliance network in the Pacific is fundamentally weakened, and the strategic geometry of the region is transformed. For Australia, Taiwan is both a semiconductor dependency and a security concern. AUKUS was announced in 2021 in part as a response to the changing strategic environment that China's military modernization and Taiwan ambitions represent. For Japan, Taiwan is an existential strategic concern. A Taiwan under Chinese control means Chinese naval forces operating freely in the Pacific, approaches to the Japanese home islands. Japan's 2022 national security strategy, its most significant defense policy shift since 1945, explicitly identified Taiwan's security as linked to Japan's own. For the United Kingdom, Canada, and New Zealand, Taiwan matters through Five Eyes intelligence cooperation, through semiconductor supply chains that all advanced economies depend on, and through the rules-based international order that the Taiwan situation tests. Here is how four analytical traditions interpret Taiwan's situation. Beijing's position is that Taiwan is a domestic issue, not an international one, and that foreign interference in Taiwan is a violation of Chinese sovereignty that China has the right to resist. The reunification of Taiwan is not aggression on this view. It is the completion of a process interrupted by historical forces that China did not choose. Taipei's position is that the 23 million people of Taiwan have built a democratic society that is distinct from the mainland, that the people of Taiwan have the right to determine their own future through democratic processes, and that coercive reunification is not an acceptable outcome. Washington's position is that Taiwan's future should be determined peacefully, without coercion, in a manner consistent with the wishes of the people of Taiwan, and that the United States has interests in Taiwan's security independent of the sovereignty question. The independent strategic analyst perspective, from RAND, CSIS, Brookings, and the academic international relations literature, is that the core challenge of the Taiwan situation is deterrence management, maintaining sufficient credibility of commitment to deter Chinese military action while avoiding provocations that could trigger the very crisis deterrence is designed to prevent. That balance is not simple. It requires calibrating arms sales, alliance commitments, diplomatic signals, and economic relationships with extraordinary precision, under time pressure, with imperfect information, and against a counterpart whose intentions and decision-making are genuinely uncertain. Before the conclusion, the skeptics challenge. What evidence would challenge the central thesis of this documentary? First, is Taiwan economically overrated? TSMC's $165 billion Arizona commitment, its fabs in Japan and Germany, and semiconductor investment in the United States, Europe, and Japan all suggest that the global dependency on Taiwan for chips is being actively reduced. The Semiconductor Industry Association projects that America will triple its semiconductor manufacturing capacity by 2032. If advanced chip production successfully diversifies away from Taiwan over the next decade, the Silicon Shield argument weakens, and Taiwan's strategic importance, while still significant, becomes somewhat less existential. Second, would China really invade? The Stimson Center, August 2025 analysis concluded that China is unlikely to invade Taiwan. Peer-reviewed academic analysis from 2025 found that reunification by force would severely damage China's own interests, including national security, economic prosperity, international status, and domestic political stability, even in a best-case military scenario. The CIA director's 2023 assessment that Xi had instructed the PLA to be ready for a capability milestone by 2027 is a goal related to military readiness, not a confirmed decision to use that capability. Third, could peaceful reunification still occur? The honest answer is that peaceful reunification, while not the direction of current trends, cannot be ruled out as a long-term possibility. Taiwan's population has become increasingly distinct in its identity from mainland China. Polling consistently shows that most Taiwanese people prefer the current status quo to either formal independence or formal unification. But the same polling shows that support for the status quo is conditional on it remaining stable, and that Taiwanese people's assessment of the status quo's stability has become less optimistic as Chinese military pressure has increased. Here is what can be stated with confidence and what cannot. What we know. Taiwan produces approximately 90% of the world's most advanced semiconductors. TSMC's 2025 revenue, $122.42 billion US dollars, up 35.9%. North America 75%. Confirmed in SEC filings. Taiwan's 2-nanometer process entered volume production Q4 2025. The Taiwan Strait carries more than 1/5 of all maritime commerce. CSIS confirmed. Taiwan has governed itself since 1949. Democratic elections held 23 million people. U.S. has sold Taiwan more than $39 billion in arms since 2015. Largest single package, $11.15 billion, December 2025. PLA, Justice Mission. 2025 confirmed. Blockade exercises December 29th to 30th. PLA conducted 46 Kindman plus 32 Protoss incursions in 2025. Confirmed by tracking data. China has 134 air bases within 1,000 miles of Taiwan. 650 hardened shelters confirmed. Taiwan passed $24.8 billion, 8-year special defense budget, May 2026. $250 billion. U.S.-Taiwan trade deal announced January 2026 confirmed. What we do not know. Whether Xi Jinping has made a decision to use force or intends to. Whether deterrence will hold as the military balance continues to shift. Whether the U.S. will intervene militarily in the event of Chinese military action, and at what level. Whether semiconductor production will successfully diversify at the pace government's project. Whether strategic ambiguity will be replaced by strategic clarity, and what the consequences would be. Whether gray zone coercion will eventually succeed where military force is not attempted. The most defensible evidence-based interpretation of Taiwan's situation in 2026 is this. Taiwan is important not simply because China claims it, nor simply because America supports it. Taiwan matters because it sits at the intersection of geography, technology, economics, democracy, military strategy, and great power competition. No other territory combines all six. Its 2-nanometer chips power the AI models that define the current era of technology. Its position in the first island chain defines the military geometry of the world's most strategically consequential ocean. Its democratic society of 23 million people has built one of the most successful economies in Asia, without formal recognition from most of the world. And its future, whether determined by deterrence, diplomacy, economics, or technology, will shape the international system for decades beyond whatever decision is ultimately made. That makes Taiwan not merely a regional issue. It is one of the defining strategic questions of the 21st century. I am the Anglosphere Report. The stories your local media won't connect. Tell me in the comments, do you think Taiwan's future will ultimately be decided by diplomacy, deterrence, economics, or technology? See you next time.